Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Painting Challenge. Today I'm taking on a Micro Galaxy Squadron TIE Fighter, and this is the battle damage version from Series 2. I wanted to do something a little different for celebrating my first 100 subs on the channel here. It's a pretty standard toy, but what I like about them is that they're highly detailed and very reminiscent of the old Action Fleet series. But I just wanted to see if I could challenge myself here and paint something different than just miniatures. I don't often do a lot of toy customs, and I just wanted to see if I could push this one a little bit further. So it comes apart into 3 pieces, and it also comes with a pilot as well. I'm going to try to preserve as much of the toy aspect of it as possible, but just kind of boost the paint job and the overall look and feel of the piece. So look away now if you have a nervous disposition, but I'm taking a Dremel tool right here, and I'm just starting to hack away. Yeah, this is a scary thing, to kind of destroy something without knowing where it's going, but yeah, just kind of get through it and be brave and try to think about artistically where you want these cuts and damages and things. Don't just hack away mindlessly. I'm being fairly strategic with the cuts here, just wanting to make sure that at least there's something on each part of the model that has some visual interest. I also want to add some detail to the cockpit as well, so I'm doing like this kind of blast mark along the side of the canopy here. And I'm switching out to a rounded sandpaper piece, and I'm just taking off some of these copyright marks on the wings. And I'm just adding some soft damage to some of the panels. I still want it to look beat up, but I don't want it to just be covered in scratch marks all the time. So I'm adding some rounded pock marks here. And then here I've got some copper wire that I'm just snipping. And then to the damaged wing portion, I'm just using some UV cure resin. And I'm just adding some damage details to the wing. So I'm using the resin to hold it in place first, and then switching over to a super glue to add the following pieces. I'm also going back and double checking the stability as well. I don't want any of these to break off. So I'm being doubly sure and just applying more of that resin. And I've got a little scrap of chicken wire, so I'm cutting this up. Just very sporadically cutting through just to make an odd shape. And gluing that onto the edge of the wing. And then I'm just taking some of the uniform look out of it by snipping and bending some of the edges of the chicken wire. I wanted to add a little bit more detail to the overall silhouette, so I took this barbed wire, which just has a nice texture to it, and I'm drilling some holes into the cockpit arm here. And what I'm trying to achieve is dangling cables and wires and things that have just fallen out. So I'm just measuring the wire, snipping it to length, and then gluing it into the drill holes that I've made. And then I'm adding a second piece, just dangling down to make it look like it's loose. And yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with the overall look of the sculpt here now. It's still kind of scary to get it to this point and not really know which direction I'm taking it, but I'm just kind of pushing and pulling different techniques until I am happy with it. And I'm putting some blue tack on the cockpit. I want to keep the shininess of the glass on the cockpit intact. And I'm about to cover the whole thing in matte varnish to help the paint adhere to the plastic. So I'm giving the whole thing a coat in matte varnish. And I love using this Mr. Super UV Cut clear matte varnish. And we're finally onto some painting. So I'm using an enamel wash all over. This is MIG Productions Dark Wash. And I'm just being really heavy-handed with this. I'm covering the whole toy. I really want some of this sculpt to come through. So this is a very liberal application of the enamel wash all over. I'm getting both the wings covered and the cockpit as well. I'm just covering everything at this stage. I'm taking care not to get it on the front glass of the cockpit, but I don't really care too much about the top. And this takes a long time to dry, so I'm probably just going to leave it overnight. I've decided I really want these edges of the wings to glow with like a flame fire effect, so I'm base coating those exposed edges with white paint to begin with. And I'm airbrushing this on just to kind of cover the areas that I want to glow. And here I'm using, this is a Speedpaint, this is Slaughter Red from Army Painter, and just straight through the airbrush. It's already really thinned down. And I'm just applying this just to the edge of that white glow. And I'm making sure I get both sides of the wing and the edges of the wing as well. And I've switched out to a vibrant orange. This is a Trollslayer orange from Citadel. I had to thin it down quite a bit to get it through the airbrush. And I'm applying this to the rest of that white section, trying not to cover over the red that I've already done. And then my third airbrush color here is Yriel yellow, and I'm just applying this to the smallest part of the glow, and you can kind of see it's really coming together now. So I'm still building up the highlights. I've switched to a brush, and this is some of that yellow mixed with some white. And I'm just gently dry brushing on some edge highlights here, just letting the brush catch the sculpt. And then this is a pure white. I thinned this right the way down so it would sink into some of the recesses and things. I really want this metal to look like it's glowing hot. And I've gone back to that light yellow, and I'm just adding just a few little sparks and moments of intense heat. I am really happy with the way this is looking so far as well. So this is a black. I tried this and I wasn't really happy with the result. I'm trying to achieve the effect of like small little moments of metal that have started to cool, or some of the silhouette that you would see through some of the fire and glowing. But I felt like this was just a little too dark and it was already quite busy. So I switched this out for an orange, and I was much happier with just toning that black down, but still keeping within the glowing hot theme. And I've gone back to the white here, and I'm just edge highlighting some of these little last moments on the edges of the wing. And for the cockpit, I've started just to really loosely dry brush on some grays. I'm going to be building up grays in different tones. So this is a neutral gray, and then I'll build up to a kind of like an ash gray, and then almost like an off-white. And then I've just switched out to a smaller brush just to kind of blend those edges so you don't see that line as much. I'm also keeping all of this dry brushing exclusively to the top half of the cockpit. I want to keep the grimy muckiness of the bottom piece intact. And this is just a really dark gray, just a quick once over just to help some of that wash come out. This is a very light gray, almost white, and I'm just edge highlighting some of these little rivets and things on the top half of the canopy. And I'm doing the same for these struts as well. I'm just working my way around, just catching moments that I feel like would benefit from just some highlights. And I put the wings back on, and I'm also just making sure that the wings match in terms of the highlights. For the cable hanging down, this is just a black. I just wanted to make it look like a cable and not just like a piece of wire. And for the top section, because these are covered in paint now, I'm just painting in some black to help put in some of those details again. For all the scratches and things that I've made, this is a speed metal metallic paint, and I'm just going around just very scratchily adding chips and damages and things just to kind of enhance some of these cuts that I've made. And for the cut along the cockpit, I've gone back to the black paint here, and I'm just adding in some scorch marks around that cut. I'm feathering the brush strokes just roughly in the direction where I think the blast would have taken it. I wanted to add some detail to the front cockpit. So this is an X-Acto knife, and I'm just cutting in some glass shattering. I'm not really sure how effective this really was, ultimately in the end. This was kind of a fun learning experience. So I cut the glass, and then this is a white paint that I'm applying to those cuts. I was a little heavy-handed with some of these, so I ended up taking just a damp napkin and wiping off some of the paint, because the plastic is still fairly shiny. And I was kind of happy with the result. So all the paint in the cut itself stayed, but all the excess paint was wiped away. It's something I want to explore further. So for all the panel damage, this is a Victorian brass metallic paint. Just a very quick application, very sporadic application. And I wanted to break up some of this grey and black as well. And this is a Nuln oil wash, a black wash, just taking some of the shine off of that brass. And then lastly, this is a dark grey that I'm just very loosely applying around the edges of the Victorian brass. It's difficult to see in this light. It doesn't really add too much, but it just helps accentuate that it is damage. And with all the dry brushing and stuff, I wanted to add in some of those details that were lost. So there's two little red dots here. So I'm adding some white to begin with, just to help this red really pop. And just carefully dotting on that red. And I was toying with the idea of painting the pilot, but I decided to do it. So this is just a fairly neutral grey, and I'm actually following the same technique that I did for Luke Skywalker's jumpsuit in the video that I'll link in the description here. I'm building up in highlights. I'm taking the jumpsuit to just a neutral grey, but all of the shiny plastic parts I'm taking all the way up to white. When you're working on something this small of a scale, it's best just to be fairly quick and general with some of the details. The more layers and things you spend, just the muddier it will get. So these are pretty harsh highlights that I'm applying here. I'm also hitting the boots and the gloves with a white highlight. And I attempted some Imperial symbols. There was 2 silver dots on the helmet to begin with, which basically became white after the matte varnish. And the uniform does have 2 patches on the shoulders as well. So I put some white dots there first, and then just a very small amount of black paint. What I'm trying to do is just kind of create a small cross first, and then another cross in the middle. It doesn't really work, it's too small, but at least it kind of implies that there's a symbol there. Luckily, there is actually quite a bit of detail in the sculpt on the chest, so I'm able to pick out some of the buttons that weren't picked out before. And then I'm hitting some of the buttons on the wrist here with some red, and I think one of them on the chest is red as well. Lastly, I just switched to a fairly neutral blue. This is Caledor Sky, and I'm just adding those last few buttons on there, and then tidying it up with the black. So here's the before and after. Are you ready? Yeah. I'm really pleased with this. It was scary for a minute, just cutting into a toy like that, especially a Star Wars toy. But man, I'm really pleased with some of these details. I think the sculpt is fantastic as well, but airbrushing on some of those flames just really enhance it. Here's some fun shots that I did afterwards. Let me know what you guys think in the comments as well. This was a really fun challenge, and I want to do more of these. Lastly, I just want to say thank you so much. 100 subs is a huge deal for a brand new YouTuber like myself. And I've had a lot of fun making these videos so far, and I still want to keep doing this. So please like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next one.